And welcome back into the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. And if you can tell, hopefully a little extra pep in the step this morning on today's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you see George got a fresh cut. Guess what? Preseason is officially over with Thursday's preseason finale, game number 3 now in the books, George. The regular season is finally here. I'm glad your hair has taken the appropriate measures. And also, I'm glad we went through a preseason, George, where we saw the first team offense and Anthony Richardson put points on the board. It's not going to be a shutout going into the regular season.
No, I mean, that's good, right? I mean, one of the things we talked about
points are good
is that they hadn't finished any drives and that was concerning. And so they finished, 3 of them, I think. First team offense finished 3 drives on Thursday night. I want to say Saturday for some reason. The entire week is discombobulated right now. But yeah, I think it's progress, and that's what we're talking about. Obviously, wasn't the Eagles starters. I would still argue that on the defensive line front, the second team for the Eagles is probably going to start for, 5-6 teams in this league at least. Also, they know that offense better than the Colts. We talked about that on the pregame pod as well. I mean, they practiced against that offense. Anyone who was there last year and the last 2 years practiced against it with Shane Steichen. And I'm sure their own offense is still fairly similar. There's definitely got to be a lot of things they recognize from what they run as well. So, they've probably seen that offense more than the Colts have. So that's, to me, to go out there and move the ball is progress. It's not, don't buy your Super Bowl tickets yet, but it was progress, which I think that's what preseason's all about. And you saw it from Buffalo to last night. There was forward momentum.
And that's what this season is going to be about. Progress from training, from the start of training camp to the end, from week number 1 to week 18. And so in that little time between the first and third preseason games, I think you're 100% right. We did see some progress. I thought Anthony Richardson looked more comfortable and the offense be a little bit more in command and in control, which is obviously good to see. Let's get into him, George, because obviously he's the big story coming out of Philly on Thursday night. Anthony Richardson, where you look at the box score, I don't think really does it justice for how he played. You look at the raw stats, 6 of 17 passing, 78 yards, also was the leading rusher for the Colts, 38 yards on the ground on 5 carries. Some good, some bad, George. Overall, how would you characterize the performance we saw on Thursday night from Anthony Richardson? Are you feeling kind of going into week number 1 better? Or maybe still, jury's out and maybe still concerned going into week number 1 with his readiness and his consistency?
Still definitely concerned with his consistency, but I think that might still be the answer in week 17. I mean, that's the number 1, bugaboo with this kid. And we know that. It's why all the experience matters. It's why he played a half last night. You just got to see it from play to play. And I mean, there were times, and it's been this way throughout practice, where he would make a spectacular play, and then he would come back a snap later and throw it right at a defender. And I think it's going to be that way. It is for most rookies. I mean, it's not just him. That's the way it usually goes. Andrew Luck did it. He just did it like 8 of 10 plays were really good, and 2 of them were right at a defender. So I think it's, I don't think that's out of the ordinary by any measure, but I think it's just something with a rookie quarterback who only has 13 starts under his belt. Everybody knows all these numbers already. You just have to live with it to a certain extent. I kind of compare it to when Kobe Fleener was here at tight end. He was going to make some spectacular catches. He was also going to drop some wide open balls, and you just had to, it was coming. You just had to live with it. It was part of the total package. And I think that's how it's going to be right now with Richardson. Some of those 11 incompletions were on him. Some of them I thought were on receivers. It's still a work in progress. The entire offense is still, it's obvious, but it's still very much, we talked about this a lot, throughout the summer. They've not been together that much. This game was one of the few times that probably even 8 or 9 of the starters were on the field together. I know Ryan Kelly didn't start. We'll see what, going on with Mo Alley Cox, but so often there's been multiple guys out, especially at the skill positions. So I think it's probably going to take a month, 5-6 weeks into the season to get, some kind of continuity up there.
I would agree. And again, maybe I did not phrase the question right in terms of asking how you're feeling, because you're right. Like, concern about consistency is going to be a problem all year long, probably going into year 2, maybe even year 3. Like, that's just something I think we have to acknowledge. And most of us already do accept going into the season. It's going to be, far from a finished product. And yesterday or Thursday was obviously that, far from a finished product. I definitely, though, do feel more optimistic coming out of that game, George, than at any point in training camp in the preseason. Because I thought on Thursday, you saw the flashes. You saw what Chris Ballard saw, what Jim Irsay saw, what Shane Steichen saw in this raw but talented beast of a quarterback that needs to be refined, but has the raw tools and can just make some of those jaw-dropping plays that 95% of quarterbacks physically won't be able to make in the NFL. And again, like you said, the accuracy was a problem. Some overthrows, some underthrows, some throws right at Eagles defenders were like, what the hell are you doing? He kind of got lucky that there was no interception there, but also some plays where it's like, how to get out of that sack, how to keep that play alive, how to even just get the ball off to throw it away to prevent a sack. You saw the legs as well, more involved in this game compared to the Buffalo game as well. So now you're starting to see, again, Shane Steichen slowly open up with what he's going to do and make this offense look. You saw more zone reads. And I think you truly kind of saw, as much as you can so far early on, the full package of what Richardson truly can do. And it's exciting, George. Like I said, can he put it all together is now going to be the biggest question we're wondering and watching. I really thought Thursday night, more than Buffalo, more than any point, at least that I have seen, and you've been in every training camp practice and OTA practice, so I'm curious your thoughts here, was yesterday in terms of flashes. Like, was that did you have any other moment in training camp or even at any point in the offseason where you kind of saw the reason why the Colts drafted him more than yesterday?
Yeah, there were a couple practices where he was really, really good. He's had a few days. I want to say the first full practice after he was named starter, publicly named the starter, was probably one of his better days out there. You didn't see really the deep ball yesterday. That's something he's really, really good at that I think is going to come into play. But there were a lot of moments there. I mean, there's one that got called back on the review that I think was one of the better plays he made. The ball ended up obviously hitting the ground, but I mean, that's one of those things where you're talking about, how many quarterbacks even get a pass off in that situation. He's under fire, he's trying to move around, and
wasn't there a defender like hanging on his leg too, if I remember correctly?
Like a defender on him, and he gets the ball out there. It doesn't.
It was like a 15-yard throw too. It wasn't like one of those all just dump it off. It was like a decent throw down the field that just one hop. It was a Kylan Granson, right?
Right.
I think was the intended target.
It doesn't end up being, a touchdown, but it ends up being
a non-sack. So you don't lose
a non-sack, and it gave, Granson had a chance to make the play. It wasn't a great chance because the ball was a little too low, but you're going to take that 10 out of 10. In that situation, it's not a sack. There was no chance of it being intercepted. And if Granson does make a miraculous play there, you're converting a first down. So, I think you saw flashes like that, and I think you did see something closer to what the offense is going to be. I think from all indication, what we saw last night, and just common sense, what Shane Steichen has done in the past, and what we've seen from Anthony Richardson and what he's done in the past, RPOs, play action, that kind of stuff are going to be a major part of this. So, I think it just makes sense. You're going to take advantage of his skill set the best in that sort of an offense.
And what I loved too so much on Thursday, George, was the fact that we saw him use his legs and not be afraid to run. But also too, especially when he was in the pocket and moving around and keeping plays alive, we saw it at Florida. We talked about it in the offseason. That's a guy that still looks, even though he's mobile and fast and big, still looks to throw the ball first and become a runner second. So you saw him a few times evade pressure, move around in the pocket, roll out left or right, and still his eyes down the field. He didn't immediately get the ball. Let me look at my number one read. Oh, he's not there. Okay, let me run. Right? We see a lot of young quarterbacks, a lot of rookie quarterbacks kind of get that fear of, okay, my internal clock is sped up. I can't go through my progressions 1, 2, 3. I thought we really saw Richardson do that yesterday, on Thursday, I should say, a good amount. And again, he looked comfortable, George, and comfortable in the pocket where he never felt like he was under duress and was always kind of calm. That's something where I don't think you can truly teach that. Like, I think we've seen with Josh Allen, you could teach accuracy and you can obviously teach, hey, this is, make a little bit better decision-making and teach some tricks in the offense and the playbook. But I think one thing you can't really teach is that pocket presence and staying calm when all around you is maybe starting to break down and you feel the pressure coming from either the front or the back. He stood in there for the most part and never left too early or never panicked and rushed a throw because there was some pressure in his face.
That to me is the best part of his college tape too. And that's something I think you're going to continue to see. I think all along this process, I know it's the thing that sold Ed Dodds on this. You know, people made a big deal when Ed said during the draft that he had to be convinced. And all he was saying was the inconsistency that we were talking about. That's on the college tape as well. And he wanted to, find out, okay, what makes me want to live with that? What else comes in that I can say, okay, that's going to happen, but he's got this. And the work ethic is a big part of that. Intelligence is a huge part of that. And then that pocket presence, which is well beyond a guy with 13 college stars, well beyond a 21-year-old. It's well beyond, the guys the Colts had to understand in the last couple of years. It's a really impressive part of his game. And I think that when you're looking for reasons to be optimistic about him, not just this year, but going forward, that for me is number one on the list, because that is really hard to teach. That's either in you or it's not. We were talking about before the pod started, 18-year-old kid for Inter Miami making the final penalty kick, with the greatest player in the world standing behind him and a cup final on the line. You don't teach those kinds of things. To be able to step up in that moment and deliver, I always feel like that's inside you. You can't really instill that in somebody. They either have it or they don't. And Richardson has it. I mean, he did the Eagles celebration in Philly. We were talking about how those fans are. If you do that, there isn't much in this league that's going to, frighten you.
I'm glad you brought that up. I love that. I love that just from the sense of, like you said, he's not afraid. I know it's a preseason game and you're going against a backup. So again, the intensity I'm sure is not there. The stadium is nowhere near as loud and energetic as it would be for a regular season game or a playoff game. Philly's one of the hardest places to play. Their fans are lunatics. I say that both as a slight, but also as a compliment. They are insane. They are truly insane. So to do that, again, I know it's different circumstances, but still, in your second ever NFL start, to do that after you scored a touchdown, to celebrate also your teammates' touch, which I do like the fact that it's not even him making the play. It's, hey, let me hand the ball off and my teammate scores. Let me just get out there and taunt the fans right in front of their face. I love the fact that he is not afraid and just going to say, look, I'll stare down, the barrel of the gun, for lack of a better term. I'm going to be here. I'm not afraid. You can't intimidate me, and let's have a little bit of fun. I think it's easy to lose the fun aspect. I think it's easy to be afraid when you are a rookie, an inexperienced rookie, like you said, with 1 year of starting under your belt at Florida. It's very easy to get intimidated or be shy. And I think we really saw on Thursday night, Richardson, again, not only look comfortable in the pocket, but also slowly start to exude his personality into the field and having fun while he plays. I think that's huge for the Colts going forward this season, George, and really for his career.
He's got a childlike wonder about him still when it comes to the game. And I think that's something that you hope he never loses. He is so happy every time the very first time I saw him in a Colts uniform, the very first rookie minicamp, he comes out skipping and, yelling and just firing everybody up. It's very much like that guy on your little league team that could not wait to play, that was running out of his parents' car to get on the field. That's Anthony Richardson every single time he steps on the field. And I think it's infectious. And I think it's going to be good for a team that's going to face adversity. Everybody does in this league. The Colts are certainly going to face their share of adversity. And when you've got a quarterback who's out there like, hey, guys, this is such a privilege that we get to be here, I think that's going to be good for them as a whole.
I don't think he did this when he was a starter. I could be wrong. I can't pretend to know exactly Florida's pregame rituals, but I remember definitely in 2020, 2021, the cameras would catch him like running off the field before like pregame warmups and be ripping backflips, just running, backflipping in, as he gets ready to like go to the locker room to get dressed for the game. It's like, he has, like you said, I think that's perfect way to encapsulate it, that like little league atmosphere of like, let me get out of the car, let me get to the field, let me, let's play. I can't wait to get this game going here. It's definitely gonna be, I think, that love for the game obviously is going to help separate the goods from the greats. And I think, again, especially for Richardson with a big learning curve, having that love for the game and just having that joy makes work easier and makes your improvement, I think, a lot easier to come by than guys who treat it like a grind and it's just a job and it's tough to get excited for. You don't put as much into it. So Richardson, again, I know there's with the inconsistencies, I think still to me taking more optimism out of that final preseason start than going into it. And also another area, George, again, under the lens of the Eagles backups. I thought the offensive line, George, played really well. And I thought I was outside of the first drive, and Quentin Nelson himself personally had a brutal first drive with a false start and then a holding call that wiped away Anthony Richardson's nice 15-yard run on 3rd and 15. I thought the offensive line played well, got a good push up front, 2 rushing touchdowns, which again, I think is nice to see as well. Able to run for over 100 yards on the ground. I thought the offensive line took a step in a nice direction, even without 2 starters out of 5 with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries out. I thought they played pretty well, and I was feeling good. I felt better about their offensive line than I did after the Buffalo game. So I think that's also a good sign that hopefully improvement is coming here for that unit.
Yeah, definitely a step forward. And I think, one of the things that we talked about after that Buffalo game as really red flags was the red zone and not being able to get short yardage on runs, not being able to finish off drives. And yes, against the Eagles backups, that's the caveat that just hands, over all of this, but it wasn't a problem on Thursday night. They finished those drives. They got the short yardage that they needed. They got that push that we were talking about not seeing in Buffalo. You saw it in Philly, and it's a step forward. Again, it's not, none of this is a finished product. None of this is, okay, it's done, put it away and move on to the next thing. But it's good to see so many areas that went up, that the arrow is pointing in the right direction on offense. And, I think, as you said, not too long ago here, a couple minutes ago, that's the most important thing this season. Is that they're just making gains every time they go out there with this offensive football team. And with the first team, we only have Buffalo and Philly to compare. And the leap was, I thought, fairly significant.
4 trips to the red zone, George, 3 touchdowns. So you're right. Like that was also an issue we saw in Buffalo where they moved the ball in 2 out of the 3 drives of the starters. 1 failed on 4th and short. Right around midfield early, I should say a little bit into Buffalo territory. The other one was a missed field goal, but again, 2 plays, one a drop by Alec Pierce, another holding call by Pharaoh Brown that wiped away the Colts deep into the Bills territory. No points in 1 red zone drive there. It's nice to see that. Again, you get down there 4 times, so it's nice to see. I know it's throughout the team, and Gardner Minshew himself had to drive and scored a touchdown. So that's included in this. But it's nice to see the Colts moving the ball again. I know it's Eagles backups, but still, take it with where you can right now. Move the ball up and down the field. And once they got into the red zone, like I said, they scored touchdowns. That is where games are going to be won and lost to this team. Score points in general and don't turn the ball over. But especially if you're going to score points, make sure it's 7 and not 3. And that was definitely, for the Colts' credit, with Richardson at the helm, did that 2 times. Punched it in twice. Really good to see. 17 first half points. Again, is also nice. Nice to see the progress there after, again, 0 points in preseason game number 1. And also, I think, George, what we saw a little bit, because I think also not just we saw Richardson develop and get a little bit more comfortable, we also started to see Shane Steichen himself open up a little bit and give you a little bit more of what this offense is going to look like in preseason game number 3 compared to what we saw in Buffalo 2 weeks ago, where it was pretty vanilla, not that many, zone reads or RPOs. It was, for the most part, we saw, I think, a lot more what this offense is going to look like. And I want to give credit to Pat Thorman here on Twitter. X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Twitter. I still like Twitter. I'm going to keep calling
I like
Twitter.
Twix. Someone said Twix. I like that.
Really? I've never heard of that. I like that. Twix. Pat Thorman on, now I'm hungry. Pat Thorman on Twix, who works for Established to run like an analytics website. He tweeted last night that 2 of the 6 drives Anthony Richardson was quarterback in the Colts for, team used tempo. Up tempo, move the ball, no huddle offense. And he said they averaged, when they did that, 12 seconds left on the play clock. So basically a play every 13 seconds if you do the reverse one with the 25-second play clock. So the Colts are moving fast, go no huddle. And if they kept that pace for the entirety of the season, which I know is tough, but if that's what their pace was for the season, that would be the first and fastest ranked offense in terms of how fast they go in the league last year. So they are someone where I think we saw early on in a small sample size, George, this no-huddle offense works. I think if you're Shane Steichen, absolutely use him more, not just because of the small sample size of success, but also if you think about it, if you're having Anthony Richardson not think as much and basically calling the play, get into the line. Okay, the defense is where we want it. Let's snap the ball. Less he thinks, I think the better he's going to be. Where if he can just play, I think that's going to really put this offense in the best position possible, especially in his rookie year.
Shane mentioned that either in the spring or early in training camp. I can't remember which. It all runs together at this point. But at some point this offseason, he mentioned the idea of using tempo and, helping a quarterback in just exactly that way, helping him be able to play more and, have a little bit less to read, a little bit less on his table, because there's already enough out there, for a rookie quarterback to deal with. If you can take some of that away with tempo, then by all means, do it. I think it's going to be something they alternate a lot. I don't think it's going to be necessarily, the Kagan
NASCAR.
offense back with Jim Kelly, definitely not NASCAR, but I do think it works. And so you're going to use it probably a lot, probably more than 2 out of 6. I would be my guess in most games. It's going to be matchup based too. I'm sure there's some teams that they're going to feel like it's not a good idea with. And I'm sure it's also going to depend on how things are going, because if you're having a rough day with it and you're going 3 and out, you're putting your defense in a pretty bad spot too. So, I think it's not going to be 100%. And I think that's why, even if teams know it's coming, you got to prepare for it, but you might not know exactly when they're going to do it. And so, to some extent, I think you do it the way, I don't know if baseball still does this as much, because there aren't really anybody who doesn't throw 100 miles per hour anymore. But, back in the day, before everybody was just freaks and everybody who came out of the bullpen was throwing 103, managers would specifically, you'd have a pitcher out there that's maybe more of a crafty guy who's throwing a lot of off-speed stuff. And then you bring in the reliever who's throwing 100, and it looks like 200 to the batter. And I think you can do that in football as well. When you're playing a normal tempo and you do that for a little while and you get them kind of into a lull, and then you come out and you go tempo, and it can look like you're going even faster than you are.
And especially, too, for a rookie quarterback, right? Because we saw the Colts do it last year, and a little bit of their offensive success before the season went off the rails was helped by the fact that they did go tempo in random times. And that was obviously with Matt Ryan and Frank Reich, but that was an area where we kind of saw this Colts offense play a little better than they did normally when they did go up tempo, when they did not huddle. But you think about it now, when you go from an older Matt Ryan to now a rookie in Anthony Richardson, and you watch a college game now, George, no one huddles. Unless you're like Navy or Army or Wisconsin, but even they're now going to an air raid offense. So the Wisconsin, as you know, it is dead basically with their ground and pound style. No one in college huddles. So it's like if Anthony Richardson already is used to running the play, going to the line, looking over at the sideline and getting the play and going, you would think, again, that would help make him feel more comfortable, especially in the first month, first 6 weeks, as he gets acclimated to real, legit regular season games. That could help get him going, where if you have a rough start to the game, and I know you're saying like the other way, if you go hurry up offense, it doesn't work, you can put your defense on the field and give him no rest. But also the other way too, if you get 2 drives where he's kind of overwhelmed, confused by the defense, maybe drive 3 early in the second quarter, you run him out there, say, hey, we're going tempo, let's kind of get into a groove. I think that could kind of work. And for someone who's not that far removed from it last year at Florida, I think that could really be a nice weapon for this offense and hopefully create more, sustained drives and more points on the board.
It's a really big club in their bag, and I think it's something that they're going to take advantage of throughout the season. And again, it's just a matter of when and how they use it. And I think if you're really successful with it, if you see results like you did Thursday night on a regular basis, common sense says you're just going to use it more. It's going to encourage you to do more and more of it. The other big thing I think that would help him out is more separation from the receivers. Something else we were talking about at the beginning of the pod. We saw from Alec Pierce all training camp long. We did not see it Thursday night. And it's not something I'm going to overreact to because it's preseason, and sometimes you're working on different things too, and you're not necessarily doing exactly what you're going to do, on September 10th. But I do think it's just something that in general, for a young quarterback, if you give him that little bit more space, you're going to see better results. I think the one guy who consistently has done that for him is Kylen Granson. Both Buffalo and Philly, probably the most memorable reception, both those games go to Granson. Hats off to him. He's definitely separating himself in the tight end race. But I also think he's the guy right now giving Anthony Richardson the most comfort in how he's running his routes. And that could change. I'm not down on the rest of the receivers. I just felt like there were a lot of contested catches last night, and that not some of them the Colts are going to have to win, and there's going to be contested catches anyway throughout the year, and some of them they're going to have to win. But if you can make fewer of those and get a little bit, even a yard, it doesn't take a lot. Just give that rookie that much more of a cushion. I think it's an important element.
You made the point before the pod, so I'm not stealing it from you. I'm just more highlighting what you said because I think you're right. I think on Thursday, too, you saw the lack of continuity from Richardson and the receivers for the most part show up because you're right. I mean, you look at it. Michael Pittman Jr. missed all of preseason before training camp. Alec Pierce, same thing. He's been banged up. Tight end room. I mean, we had Drew Ogletree start on Thursday night, but he's barely been on the field for training camp this offseason, and that's a relationship that you're working on. Josh Downs had a big drop, but at least he's been someone who's been on the same page with Richardson. It's really been Downs for the most part and Granson have been like the two consistent guys all off season that have been around, that have been getting reps. And so, like you said, I think otherwise, like, while there's some encouragement there and there's some missed throws on Richardson's end in terms of inaccuracy, I thought also too, like I said, with a little bit of separation, and also you had the receivers as well trying to learn how to catch the Richardson ball because it's coming in hot. And it's still, again, you got used to his tendencies. And the only way you do this by reps. And that's one thing that they really, up until training camp, missed a lot of those.
And they're going to have now 2 solid weeks of practice leading up to, that opener to get those reps in. And I think it's going to be critical that these guys, and the thing is, I know Pittman and Pierce are workaholics, Downs, McKenzie. I know that Richardson is, so they're probably going to be throwing, after practice ends, getting out there early before practice. They're going to get those reps in, but I think it was noticeable and not a shocking development that it's that way right now. Like you said, they haven't had a lot of time together as a unit. But I think it goes back to something we talked about in a previous pod, which is that when you've got a rookie quarterback and he's inexperienced, everybody around him has to be even better than usual. It's just part of the package that comes with it. If you're an A, you have to be an A+. If you're a B, you got to be a B+. Whatever your game is, it has to raise a level because you just got to do everything in your power to make sure that, like, that passage that went through Josh Downs' hands, that's got to be caught. You got to reward your rookie quarterback. Of course, he's a rookie receiver too. So, these things are going to happen. But I think especially the veterans, to me, that's one of the big things that happened last year that brought this team down. The guys who were supposed to step up in the big moments consistently did not. And they need, if that happens again, it's an awful lot to ask your rookie to cover for all of that.
And that's why I think when you look at the totality of 2023, George, right, we've talked about it from the perspective of, Anthony Richardson's development. We'll see how he progresses. It's also a tryout for everyone else on the team, especially offensively, skill-wise. Because to your point, like, if Michael Pittman Jr. is not bringing down a lot of these 50-50 balls, which is kind of what was his specialty, and he's more, again, of that tough receiver than he is a speedster or a deep threat. If he's not consistently making plays and he wants a big-time deal at the end of the year, if you're Chris Ballard, I don't say you can do it. If Alec Pierce is a guy that's not winning one-on-ones consistently, I mean, he's only a second-year player, so you're not going to get rid of him or trade him, but that's a guy I think you have to start having an eye on. Like, you need now to look at this offense this year specifically, not just from, how does Anthony Richardson play, but, like, to your point, who was making plays around him? Last year, I think you hit it perfectly. When you needed a play from your big playmakers, they didn't step up. Offense, defense, special teams, when you relied on guys, 9 times out of 10, the guy you relied on did not make the play, did not step up. The Colts need playmakers in the clutch. And so that's also, I think, a big part of what 2023 is going to look like. Who's making plays? Who's going to make Richardson better? Let's keep him. If you're not, changes got to be made, George. Changes have to be made. And that really, this entire season, especially on offense, needs to be an evaluation on everybody and say, who's going to be here now for the long term? Let's start setting our eyes for the next 5 years. Who do we envision on this roster leading us to greatness in 5 years, and who is not, and who do we kind of have to trim the fat with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why I keep calling it an evaluation year. You want to find out if you got some dudes, and who are those dudes? That's what you're looking at this year on both sides of the ball. And that's why you're okay with a really young secondary, because you're going to find out which one of these guys steps up, which one of them has that whatever it is inside them to do the Eagle celebration on the field in Philly. That's what you're looking for out there at corner, to a large extent at defensive end, even some of the linebackers behind the guys that like Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed and Shaq Leonard, some of those other guys, Grant Stewart, JoJo Doman, Sagun Ulobi, who's got that something extra inside them. The receivers are in that boat. The running backs are 1,000% in that boat now. The NFL is all about opportunity. That's all you hear on both sides. Coaches talk about giving people opportunities. Players talk about wanting just that opportunity, and then they'll do the rest. This is a year of opportunity on this roster. All 53 guys at some point or another are probably going to get an opportunity, and maybe all 69 if you want to count the practice squad as well. I mean, you're going to see a lot of guys given a chance to step up either as a starter or as a rotational player, and that's what this year's all about. Which ones of them make you not be able to take them back off the field?
Who will seize it? Who will seize the opportunity given to them and leave no doubt of whether it's in training camp making the team or not, and now whether it's in the regular season being on the team long term and being, like I said, a guy you can rely on now for the next few years as his team transitions to hopefully building back up and actually being a legit contender here in a few years. Defensively, George, speaking of one of those dudes that I thought on Thursday played well, again, with the guys of Eagles backups and some second and third string receivers, I liked what I saw from Dallis Flowers, George. He's got a corner starting spot locked down already. And I think if that was ever in doubt on Thursday night, he kind of shut any sort of competition or questions up. I liked the way he played. He had 2 pass breakups. He was blanketing some receivers. He was a ball hawk. Yesterday made a few nice plays. I thought Dallis Flowers, again, Eagles backups, lower competition level, but I liked what I saw from him specifically.
He's another guy with a chip on his shoulder. It doesn't surprise me that you see him come out and do that. He's a very confident guy. He's a guy who feels like, he's been overlooked for most of his career, even going back to college and recruiting and, every step of this way. And he's out there trying to prove it. And I think those are the guys that you really get excited about. The ones that come out here with something to prove, who feel like, they haven't been maybe treated the best on the way up. And now they're going to show everybody. Those sometimes are some of the better stories in this league. And I think Dallis Flowers is one of those guys. I think Dangbo had a really good day. Obviously it was, again, with him probably against the threes. But for guys like that, just getting out there, the muscle memory, getting through the reps, getting the quarterback on the ground, no matter who the quarterback is, another step forward. So we'll see, where that leads, how much of that translates to September 10th. But yeah, I think that's what you want to do. It's the same reason why the score doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, you're not looking at results. But I guarantee you, Shane Steichen's a happy man coming off that field with a win, because the guys know what it feels like, even in a game that doesn't count, to go out there and do the things you need to do and win a football game.
I want to throw 3 random things by you. Actually, 2 are on topic. One is really random. I just want to get because this is kind of a hot take, so I just want to hear your thoughts here. I know it's preseason. I'll say that, but I thought Al Michaels on the broadcast sucked. I thought he sucked. You could tell he did not give a you-know-what about the backups. He watched maybe or knew the names of the starters for the Colts. Eagles, forget it. I mean, I think he called Tanner McKee, Gardner Minshew at least one time, maybe a few times. That was one of those, all right, I got to do it. The check's in the mail already. I'm just going to mail it in myself. Al was in preseason form.
Very much so. I would agree. I will say, since Amazon got it, I feel like there's been a lot of whining in that booth. Now that while we're just going off on a tangent, even last night, like as they're getting close to halftime, we made some comment like, I hope Anthony Richardson comes back out for our sake. It was that way a lot, last year, and they did have some stinker games. I mean, don't get me wrong. Broncos, Colts, right top of the list. I think they followed that up with the Bears Commanders game that was nearly as bad. But during that, you saw him in the regular season, kind of opining for wanting a different game, and I'm like, what you signed up for. I don't know. He's one of the all-time greats.
Yes.
His call in the 1980 Olympics. That hockey miracle is going to live forever. But that was bad. That was a bad night for him. He's got it, just like the Colts have some growing to do. Al Michaels has some growth ahead of him as well.
Right. Not taking anything away from his career accomplishments. He is one of the best, one of the GOATs of broadcasting without a doubt. But you look at the last 2 games he's been on, the Chargers, was it Chargers Jaguars playoff game with Tony Dungy, where Al, I think, was just didn't care that we just saw a 27-point comeback. Was like, all right, let me get to the plane and get and end the season, get my offseason started. And then, boy, he picked up right from there. And you could tell, man, he was pissed to be in the booth. If you could add a running clock and maybe call it after halftime, I think he would say, okay, pack it up. I'll see you, I guess, at this point, week 2 to get the season off. He would want to be anywhere but Philly.
That energy we were talking about that Anthony Richardson has, Al Michaels was the other end of that spectrum. He's on the complete opposite end.
That's for sure. That is for sure. Okay, so that was one thing. The other thing is this. Obviously, we talked a little bit about roster cut down and some positions to watch going to the final preseason game. Coming out of that, George, right? We talked and obviously highlighted tight end. Mo Cox was your surprise. Like, hey, that's a guy put on your radar of him not making the team. Did not play on Thursday. Drew Ogletree played and had a nice catch. Kylan Granson played, had some nice, one nice catch as well. That's, like I said, I think the highlight of the game, the highlight throw for Anthony Richardson was that pass to Kylan Granson. We saw Will Mallory now at the backups, but still have 2 nice receptions as well. So you get some contributors that were playing. Is that a situation where are you changing your thought at all? I know you said Mo Cox, you don't think is going to make the team, and he didn't play, so it's not like he can himself change that with his play. But when you see Ogletree get in the field, Mallory get in the field, and Grancy in the field, still feeling the same way?
Yeah, I don't know if I think that Mo Cox isn't going to make the team. He's just, I thought, one of the guys
to watch.
It's a surprise.
Okay,
it's one of the areas it could be. I don't know. I tend to think him not playing is a good sign for him usually in this 4th preseason game, because it generally means, yeah, you're okay. You've been banged up.
Well, just really fast on that note, does your opinion change with everyone else playing? Like, even like DeForest Buckner was out there, who's missed, a good amount of training camp recently. Yeah. Like, you had Michael, like the starters on offense played the whole first half. Like, does your mindset change? Like, outside of really Shaq Leonard, who was hurt and concussed, every starter that's going to play was on the field.
And Jonathan Taylor, who's not done anything.
Yes.
I know it's tough right now because we don't have a track record for Shane. When Frank Reich was here, you kind of got an idea of, okay, look at that 4th game rotation and then the 3rd game his last couple of years, and you had a pretty good idea of what it meant. Still getting that baseline, and then this preseason was all over the place. I mean, Buffalo kind of went the way a first preseason game normally goes. Chicago, you had the joint practices, and the starters really didn't play at all. And then you come back into Philly, and I thought the starters played longer than I expected. So, yeah, it's tough to say. And then you got guys like Buckner's one of those guys that I think he's like Anthony Richardson. You got to pull him off the field, So it's hard to say where Mo's at physically. Could he have played? I know he came back to practice, but is he actually cleared for full contact? Is he able to go out there and play in a live game? So I don't know that really factors in right now for me, because we don't have enough data on how Shane Steichen handles things for me to really accurately project. I just know that tight end room, someone's getting cut who you've heard of. The numbers, unless they keep 5, someone who gets cut is going to be a name that is recognizable to every fan.
Now, you had Laura Overton, a tremendous sideline reporter for the radio broadcast, tweet before the game that Shane Steichen told her that players that missed a good amount of training camp but were back at joint practices on Tuesday, DeForest Buckner, Mo Cox, that they were expected to play. And I saw Buckner on the field. So I don't know if there was an injury that happened during joint practice, during warmups, or something like that, where they maybe exercise more caution as to why he didn't play. But at least for me, I would say that if I'm Mo Cox, I would not feel great. I would not feel great about at least being a lock to make the roster. Again, when you look at your inability to get on the field, I would say that's more not Shane saving him, but just more maybe being injured. And the other 3 guys playing right now in a loaded tight end room played well and made contributions in the game. That's one where I think, like I said, I think it's definitely a name to watch without a doubt. And if it's not cut, maybe traded as well. Like, that's kind of leading to the other area we're going to talk about here, George, is you have Danny Pinter go down, right? Your primary backup center get rolled up on and leave with an ankle injury. I've not seen an update in terms of severity. I've not seen an update in terms of timeline for him to be out. So it could be a rolled ankle and maybe misses a few weeks. Could be something a lot worse and maybe he's out for months and or the season. But either way, with Pinter seemingly banged up now and maybe his week 1 status in question, obviously Ryan Kelly not playing on Thursday because of him, getting banged up and still working through some injuries as well, George, that could be a situation where if you're more like Cox, he could be used as trade bait to bare minimum, maybe trade for some offensive line depth, if not ship Cox off the team to bare minimum make some waiver claims. But either way, George, I think one of the areas we kind of talked about severely, I should say, lacking depth is the offensive line, and that took another hit on Thursday. Pinter now going down.
Huge hit. I mean, you look at those guys on that second team line. Arlington Hambright has really stood out, and he's got a lot of versatility, but he's not center. Dan Skipper has a lot of experience in this league. He's played a good while. He's got more, caps under his belt than anybody else, but he is not a center. And Danny Pinter is the only guy on that roster who you really feel good about if he has come in for Ryan Kelly. And that looks scary. I mean, we don't know what the situation is right now, but it looks scary. When you watch the replay and you see, his ankle going one way and him going the other, it's never a good thing. He is Ball State guy, so I know he's super tough. So there's always that. Cardinals are indestructible. So maybe that will come out to play in his favor. But it's a big loss. And it does, my immediate thought was waiver claim, because they're in that 4th waiver slot anyway. Somebody cuts a center with some experience, or somebody who played for Philly or played in Kansas City, or that they're familiar with for some reason. Can they get AQ Shipley out of retirement? Is that too late?
Hey, talk to your boy Pat.
See where that goes. But to me, that's becomes a focal point now for cut down day or for this weekend in general, trying to find, Wesley French still here, Dakota Shipley still here. That's it. That's the centers on the roster outside of Ryan Kelly. It just seems like a point of emphasis.
And especially too, that has to be. We talked about before in training camp why Chris Ballard did not go out and acquire bare minimum competition on this offensive line in depth, and why he stayed pat. I don't get it. And even in the draft, when you draft Blake Freeland and you draft Jake Witt, Freeland's more ready. I will say that Witt is a total project, right? That's a guy that you draft him late and say, okay, this is a guy that maybe in 2 or 3 years from now we can develop into being a significant player. But I don't think he's a guy that they've envisioned right now. We'll take him, and hey, if emergencies happen, he can get on the field here in year number 1. Freeland's closer, but still, as a rookie tackle and still, trying to work his way in, it's they didn't even really draft any legitimate depth, with any high pick. So it's more project guys. So again, even you could say oh, well, they drafted offensive lineman in the draft and they signed, I'm blanking now. Can you please help me out? Jeez, my memory stinks. The guy from Alabama, Ekiyor. Holy cow. Emil Ekiyor, they signed him as a free agent. And that was a guy that thought was going to be drafted. But again, it's they didn't so you could say they added. That's all they did. They didn't add depth. They added bodies, George. They added bodies that maybe in 2024, 2025 could be legitimate backups and or vying for a starting spot. But in 2023, when the depth is already thin, to now stand pat and now already see the injury bug happen to one of your backups, your key backups, it's frightening. Again, we've talked about the importance of the offensive line, and now your Chris Ballard, your sirens better be going off in your head of we got to make moves, plural, George, not just one here.
Yeah, well, and Jake Witt's already on IR. He's a guy that had a hip injury in camp. So even amongst the guys that they brought in, you've already had some attrition. And that's a position that they go through a car crash on every snap. It's a position that generally you're going to have to rotate some guys into. It's just the nature of the beast up there. I always thought that the offensive line depth was going to be something that would be a focal point of cut down day because it has been in the past, and they found some guys there that have really helped this team. I think Matt Pryor was a cut down guy. I know Mark Lewinsky wasn't a cut down guy, but he was the equivalent of it in December, as a guy off the waiver wire. So they've definitely had some success in going and seeing guys from other systems who they think will fit in here and working them in. I would watch the Giants too. I forgot about that when we're talking about people on cut down day. That's where Tony Sperano came from So you figure, if there's a guy that he's familiar with there that he really likes, that could be in the mix. Obviously, the Eagles with Shane coming from over there, I think would really be, and the depth they have on that roster anyway, that would be a really interesting place to look. But I think as much as familiarity with a coach and a player, which is always a big deal, just the system that they want to run, what they want to do, who's got that skill set. The part that we don't know is, who did they look at in the draft 3 years ago and didn't get, who might get cut. Those kind of things are all going to come into play here, but they're sitting fourth in the waiver wire. So I already thought there were going to be quite a few claims. I think backup center has got to be right near the top of the list.
Absolutely. It should have been already. And now, especially with the Pinter injury, like I said, bare minimum now, put a little fuel to the fire here as we do get set for cut down day on Tuesday. We will be recording a podcast Sunday night. We release Sunday night or Monday morning, depending if you're a night owl or an early bird when you want to consume your content. So as a cut down preview, talk about the biggest positions, some names to watch in terms of who could be in jeopardy, who could make the team. So a big roster cut down day pod is coming again, depending on when you want to listen, when you want to digest it, Sunday night and or Monday morning. Before we get out of here, George, one non-Thursday night game note, and that is obviously Jonathan Taylor. We can't now at this point go a podcast without mentioning JT's name. We had a report on Thursday night from Barry Jackson, who works at the Miami Herald, legitimate reporter. Like, it's not like one of those stupid Twitter reports that now anyone with a blue check can buy and put out fake news and fool people. Like, unfortunately happens a lot in the sports world. This is legit. The Dolphins made an offer to the Colts. It was rejected. We don't know what the offer is. We also know that right now the two sides are still talking. So there's right now, as we record this on Friday, momentum there, at least for a possible Jonathan Taylor trade. Again, the Colts are asking for a high price, and Jonathan Taylor wants a contract extension. A lot going against this trade. But you hear that news, George, that at least there's some multiple teams interested. We've seen the Bears be interested. Eagles reportedly are interested as well. So some teams are definitely calling Chris Ballard and making offers and at least kicking the tires on a possible trade. We know the Dolphins right now, the only team that at least has made some sort of offer. The Colts are now won and rejected. It is Friday. By the time Tuesday comes, George, is Jonathan Taylor, in your mind, in your opinion, on this team still?
I don't think so. We'll see. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the difficulty in making a trade, and you're seeing it in action already, because the Colts obviously want a lot in return. And I don't know how many teams are going to want to give the Colts what they want and sign him to the contract he wants. But it just feels like a divorce is inevitable here. I think at some point, one side or the other is going to have to give a little bit and make this happen. Talked about it on the last pod. For me, it's really hard to imagine him being here all 17 weeks and just the scrutiny that's going to be on every little thing that happens, unless you're able to mend those fences publicly. And put that to bed, which I think that would be one of the most remarkable turn of events around this franchise the last few years. And we've seen some pretty remarkable things.
On that note, let me ask you this, because maybe I'm being naive, and so you can tell me. So if he's not traded by Tuesday, let's just say he's on the roster and the Colts are just going to go into bare minimum week number 1 with him, with the assumption he's going to play and be on the team. Is there any chance the Colts go back to the table for this year and this year only and rework the contract to give him $2 million, $3 million more? Is that, in your mind, a possibility whatsoever? Ian Rappaport basically said no. And he didn't see how, he doesn't think that this is going to get any better, and the Colts are not willing to offer any more money or willing to now, he didn't say more money, but basically not give him a contract extension, which obviously we knew about, at least this year. Is there any chance of that happening where if he's not traded, they can go back to the negotiating table, at least for 2023, make nice?
I mean, the relationship's been so bad, throughout the summer is why I keep thinking he won't be here and it's not going to happen. But there's always a chance. I mean, I think we've learned that, if nothing else, since 2020, we've learned anything can happen, so don't rule anything out. But right now, there's not a great likelihood of it. I just don't see this relationship being mended. Now, things change, circumstances change. Who knows what happens over the weekend and if somebody's line of thinking changes. But I know that, from everything that I've heard, it's not since the trade request went public, it's not gotten better. It's only gotten worse between the two sides. So that's why I think it's just time to, even if the Colts have to take less than they want, take that best offer and move on. It's going to hurt the team this year. There's no question about it. On the field, it's going to be difficult. Go back to our pod from last week. If you want to hear about, all the ways that we think that not having Jonathan Taylor could affect this football team. But at this point, I just think the relationship's beyond repair. Now, that being said, we're talking about, a franchise in particular that some pretty unlikely things have happened. So they're usually negative. Maybe this one would be a positive one that shocks everyone.
I still don't think he's getting traded. I still think that he's going to be on the roster here week number 1. And again, maybe I'm wrong and naive here. I do think that some sort of meeting in the middle, some sort of compromise, I think will happen where he will get a little bit more money than the $4.3 million he's scheduled to make this year, but he's not going to get, even $8 or $10 million. I don't think is a possibility. But this is what I'll say to Chris Ballard. If he's actually the Colts still have the leverage here, George, in the sense that they don't have to trade him. Because Jonathan Taylor, at the end of the day, whether he's on the Colts or another team, I'm assuming if he does not get a contract extension, whether he's traded or not, the best thing for his career and getting a new deal at the end of 2023 is playing this year. And playing like he did in 2021. So if you're the Colts, they've done a lot of things wrong so far. But if you're Chris Ballard, I think that's where you could sit back and realize at the end of the day, I don't have pressure, if you will, to trade him, because even if he's upset, even if he's grumpy, disgruntled, come game day, he still has to perform, because if not, he's only hurting himself. And if anything, George, he's only making the Colts look better if he does not play well. That's another thing I think too here. I think there's pride, right? There's pride in this on both sides, especially with Jonathan Taylor, where he feels disrespected. You're only going to lessen your case and strengthen the Colts' case if you're on this team in 2023 and play like crap. Get hurt.
Yeah, if he's out there, he's got to play well. There's no question. I just my issue is always, the circus that's going to surround it. It's just going to be because the Colts have the leverage. There's no question about it. They can keep him. He's under contract. They can not make a trade if they don't feel like it. I just am not looking forward to, weekly updates on who he shook hands with and who he scowled at and whether he was run too much, whether he wasn't run enough. It's just, it will be a nightmare for a rookie quarterback.
This is partly on the Colts then to make good on what you threatened. You said Tuesday's the deadline. You said Tuesday is trade or no trade. If Tuesday comes and goes and the Colts don't get a trade offer they want, then in theory, I know common sense does not prevail with this team. I get it, and we've talked plenty of times about how common sense should easily prevail, and it does not. But common sense, George, should say, okay, Tuesday the deadline, you didn't get a trade done. All right, you're on the team for 2023. We're not entertaining any more calls. Tell your agent, get off the road. This is over. You had your chance. You blew it. Now you're a Colt in 2023. Now we're going to, do what's best for both of us here. If you take that hardline stance, which it's easier said than done because this team does not like doing the easy thing and sometimes the smart thing, that should be the end of it. Should be the end of it, where we should not be here in week 2 and seeing who Jonathan Taylor's talking to pregame or where his agent is or what he's tweeting or what he's liking on his tweets. The drama, in theory, should end on Tuesday. Either he's gone or he's there, but because you set the deadline, it should be okay. This is it. Now you remember the team. There's no more questions. But with that said, again, if you're Chris Ballard and you think, okay, fine, I got to trade him, you cannot. To me, the biggest mistake Chris Ballard can make here is not getting the right value, is going back on your word of getting the equivalent or a first round pick. If you take a 4th, if you take a 3 and a 6, something like that, if you get bad value, that to me is the worst thing Chris Ballard could do here. I don't think keeping him is the worst case scenario. I don't think trading him is the worst case scenario if you get the right, you get the right package back. I think the worst case scenario is caving, basically giving in this staring contest where if the Dolphins are going to hold strong on whatever offer they made, Colts are going to hold strong on the price they have. If the Colts are the ones that cave, that to me is the failure, George. That's where the failure is. is caving when you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I'm just a jaded old journalist. I just don't see good endings here. I see nothing but bad endings. I think it's going to be something, no matter how it turns out, that leaves a sour taste in everybody's mouth. But we'll see. But one thing I do think, you said in there, this team does not like to do the easy thing. That should be the new name of the pod. That should be our new podcast name. This team does not like to do the easy thing.
Can the Colts basically build a new department within their front office, like common sense department? Me and you, we're not asking for a big salary here, George. We're not going to be Jonathan Taylor asking for a big time extension. But I think you just use us as consultants to say, what would the common folk do? What does common sense say here, George, to do? Let's go ask the two guys who maybe know and have a good pulse for that. Maybe we can get to Jim Irsay, and maybe we can stop him from being arguably, I think right now, the worst owner in the NFL in terms of derailing the team on the field. Hire us.
He's been on a bad run. Maybe they can do like an Abby's hat pick department, and Twitter suggestions can come in and then just pull one out of the hat. And that's what they do for that situation.
I'm shocked we've not gotten that tweet yet from Jim. Colts trivia, first team to get it right gets Jonathan Taylor.
It's a long weekend. That's all I'm saying. There's still a long way till Tuesday. Don't rule it out.
But I'm serious though. Like, I'm joking, but I'm serious. Common sense department needs to be the next. Forget analytics. Forget speed studies, like whatever these fancy tools they have now to study a lot, track a lot of data. Common sense department needs to be the next one added to this front office because, George, they need it, and we are for hire.
It's a bad run. There's no question about it. And hopefully, once this Taylor saga is done, one way or another, they can start moving forward. I think that's one of the most important things about it and that's why I think, of all the points that you made, the serious ones in the half joking ones, I think the most important thing is Tuesday needs to be the end, one way or another. Tuesday needs to be the end. Either he's traded or he's here, but it's done because starting Wednesday, they need to start moving forward with Anthony Richardson and what the future of this franchise is going to be.
And I'm afraid, George, I think Chris Ballard especially you know him well. He's a no nonsense guy, right? So I don't think enjoys these rumors swirling and being in the middle of drama. The one guy we got to get to, the only man that's really causing this right now and would feed this going forward after Tuesday is Jim Irsay. And if he can buy in and Chris Ballard's message or Shane Steichen's message can get through to him of just, Jim, please, let's just if JT's on the team, please, olive branch, let's figure it out and just let this season go by where he's not a storyline. It could work. The issue is that's the guy that is causing most of this and is living in an alternate universe. And that's also, by the way, George, part of our brand new department, common sense department. It'll be all encompassing. On the field decisions, trade decisions, Twitter decisions, George. Should I tweet this? Hold on. Before you hit post, let's go to the common sense department, read the tweet and say, is that a smart thing for an NFL owner to say on Twitter to his massive following? Yay or nay?
That's a very important department. That Twix department might be the most important department that they could have.
Imagine we were in charge a month ago, George. Honestly, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back here, give us too much credit. I don't think we are where the Colts are right now if we were in charge and prevented Jim Irsay from tweeting.
I would be the absolute worst owner in the NFL. I would be 1,000% mad every day. I would just try to get every high-rated player. My salary cap would be just completely bollocksed. I straight up, I would be the absolute worst, but I would be entertaining. I mean, I would definitely give headlines to reporters while my team was burning in flames.
Would you call Clark Hunt of the Chiefs and basically make a different trade offer for Patrick Mahomes every day?
Oh, absolutely.
Put signs
every day. And then I would try to play him and Richardson on the field at the same time if I was able to acquire him.
Submit
2-quarterback offense.
Oh, now we're talking. Submit trades. You just hope that he accidentally hits accept one day. Okay, it's through.
Every single day.
He hit the wrong button.
Make those trade offers public on Twix too, so everyone can see them.
Patrick Mahomes for a conditional 5th-round pick. Who says no?
Right. See, exactly. And then when he doesn't take that one down, guess what? It's only getting lower. Now it's a 6th rounder. What do you think about that, Clark?
Yeah, take that. I'll trade you $1 for Patrick Mahomes. Oh, you hit accept. Okay, there we go. There it is. So I think
Chris on Madden.
We learned a few things on this pod. Twix is now the new name for Twitter. Tremendous. George and I, common sense department for hire. Let's go. George would be the best GM. Well, you'd be the best owner for any other team that's not the Colts, because I would love to
absolutely.
watch the world burn when it's not my team. So forget about the money. Just someone, I guess, hire or allow George to buy the team for like $2, and the NFL ratings would skyrocket. Roger Dallis, expansion team. How about an expansion team?
That's
Branch
amazing.
out.
Then I could run an expansion draft. Oh yeah.
You would get the fan base bought in right away. That's probably the best for you.
I want Jerry Jones too. I'll be my own GM. I might even be my own head coach. First to hold all 3 positions.
Hold a press conference after the game.
Oh yeah.
Be the second owner to hold a post-game press conference.
Do the whole, all the way across the board.
The George Bremer Stadium.
Yeah, it'd be like Paul Brown, right? I just see him with the Bremers.
Yeah. Where'd you move to?
All over this.
Where's the spot?
Muncie. Obviously, we'll be right there. Play Ball State, Schumann Stadium. We'll just add on so that they can recruit better. Give them some luxury suites. Be one of those, share it with college. Yeah, the Muncie Bremers.
Wow.
Muncie had an NFL team way back in the beginning too, so we're going back to history. Like we're pulling back tradition.
NFL does love history. Love the Packers. Love the Bears. Let's go back to true roots. An original 6, if you will.
Huge. I don't know how the NFL can say no, honestly.
Roger Duff, you're listening. You got your new expansion owner right here in George. Mercer, if you're listening, you got your brand new front office department here that's going to help you out and help this team out going forward here. So a lot going well here, George. And hey, Anthony Richardson showed flashes of why he was a 4th overall pick of what the Colts see. I would say overall, as preseason comes to an end, the haircut looks good. And yeah, this is an overall good, positive, good vibes podcast going into week 1.
Yeah, and the way training camp started, what were the odds of that?
Impossible. Slim to none. So look at it. We have turned it. We have managed single-handedly to turn the vibes around, at least heading to week 1. After that, we'll see. We'll see where vibes are week 8. But hey, for right now, at least they are high. And you know what? It's a Friday, George. Everyone enjoy the weekend. You want good vibes going into the weekend. Hopefully we provided that for you right here. So that'll do it for this edition of the Blue Horseshoe Pod. Again, Sunday night, Monday morning. Be late Sunday night is when our roster cut down preview pod will be out there. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Check us out wherever you get your pods, Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Bright blue logo is where our new feed is, where every single episode we record is uploaded there. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Podcast.